Yay. Okay. We are finally live on
Okay.
YouTube. So great. So we can start. Does anyone want to do the announcement?
It is 17:08 Pacific time, and we are coming together as a thinky feely as a as a bay, as a belief entity identifier. Great. We are linked across space and time. Across vast internet networks. Or what is it?
Oh yeah, right. Oh, that was super fun. And I bet if Nine was here, they'd be like, that's so culty. Because they have like such a fear of cults. But I love it. Um, so okay, so yes, here we are. Okay, I'm just like I put the agenda in the chat. Just gonna go over some agenda-like things, but I will put it again in the chat. We missed it.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's do check-ins. Oh, check. We're gonna check in about roles. I really love the parliamentary parliament drag. Oh, is that what
Parliamentary
you said?
dread.
Yeah, we do parliamentary drag. Like this really feels like we're doing parliamentary drag. And Reframer's here. Yeah, Bestie's here. Yes. Actually, Bexty, sorry. Dan just left. Oh, I'm sorry. Reframer just left my house and now is in Houston.
Oh,
Um,
that was
you're
fast.
you're teleportation. You are being recorded and broadcasted. Ooh, I'm
Oh, and
gonna
yeah,
record on
and
my
have
computer.
the AI summary on. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we got recording on my computer, we're broadcasting live, we got the AI companion on. So we're all like
We're completely
companions.
monitored.
Tapped in.
We could be holding this meeting at the NSA's office, and it would be just as private.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. Okay, so we don't need do we need rules today? Check it in. That was like a new thing we added. Um, I think maybe only people knows what I'm talking about. So
Um, if anybody feels an off vibe or feels like we're taking too much time, you are empowered to speak up. That's but the thing about roles is if it's everybody's responsibility, it's nobody's responsibility. So um, I don't know, consider yourself extra empowered. But so if you want to volunteer for one of those roles, now is your chance where you can volunteer at any point in the meeting.
yeah, and yes, that was great. And to tell you what the rules are, is a facilitator, which is basically like the AI or the agenda goalkeeper. So making sure we keep. And then there's the vibes facilitator, that's the soma, the nervous system, the stat keeper, which is subject object tracker, just to see how people are emerging. And this is more about like power, right? And then timekeeper, just making sure we adhere to the time of the agenda. And then there's note taker, big and small, the archivist or data collector. So we decided to check in because we started doing that, but then we dropped it, checking in if any of that's necessary. So Ripple just said, if any of that's necessary, that you all are welcome to jump in. Yes? Great. All right, let's share highs and lows of the week. And that is also we added a new thing about like life lessons, kind of like life lessons, like from the highs and lows. And if anyone wants to start, you can start and then just pick someone.
I'm pretty ready since I shared some yesterday, but I have new ones today. So um the well, yeah, I think that it'll be the life lesson. The life lesson from my highs and lows is so I was in a fairly long job interview process that just ended with me not getting the job offer. And they gave me this like fairly extensive feedback. And I've been like since like Wednesday of last week, I've been trying to like figure out what parts of this feedback to integrate. Um, and I've gotten help from a lot of people, including the process group yesterday and my two partners today, and in recent days. And oh, and then also my other tank group, my turtle tank, was like sort of indirectly. We sort of and we I've found this like realized this practice around actually finding my grounding and speaking from the heart rather than from what I think people want to hear. Um, and realizing it's a practice that I need to practice like I would holding my breath or mindfulness or whatever. And so like just the being able to crystallize this experience into a constructive practice that I can keep repeating. It's basically a Scrooging moment in a sense. And I will pop to Fulcrum.
Um, my highest, I was at a wedding yesterday. I love love, so it just makes me so happy to like see people getting married and it's like all sweet and cute and everything. Um, but like it was like also a low for me, I think. I like at some point during the wedding I just felt like I was like so distant from all of these love like this is never going to happen to me. So like I just got like thinking like that. But um that's that. Um life lesson wise, um I I've been spending a lot of time doing therapy and like working on like my mental health and stuff. I'm just um there isn't anything like specific I learned, but it's just like in general, I feel like I'm learning a lot and I'm like doing better now. Like I have less social anxiety and stuff. I'm able to focus more on myself, and also on like building a healthy life. I changed my lifestyle a lot. So yeah. So that's just me recently. Um, I'll pass it to Entangler.
Thanks, Fulcrum. It's so good to see you.
Mhm.
Hi is today I had my sculpture genres one class, and it's my favorite class. Oh, TK, you were in that class. That class is always like every single year is like the best class. It's so good. So we had our like final crits, and everyone's so nice. And I got a nice card from one of my students, Steph, with a nice note. Um, and the work is great. So it was very exciting. And I felt like on like my game. I haven't been feeling that way quite so much in the other reviews. So that felt good. And I, I mean, a low, well, I guess this is the life lesson. The low is kind of like I have to write this, I have to write two kind of writing or pieces, like an email and a text that kind of break down like one something like breaking down sort of like I mean, having to do with race and thinking about whiteness and breaking down kind of like whiteness, or I think it's white fragility. So I have to like break that down. And then this other thing that I have to do in terms of like kind of like trying to come up with an argument in terms of why I should be able to do this certain thing and teach this class. And that I think that's also kind of like I don't know, it's kind of like annoying to have to couch it under like a DEI thing, but it is. And so in that way, it's like super annoying to have to write and explain it. And I hate things like that. But my life lesson is through that in terms of like I have like this sense of urgency, like when it happened, like I was like I need to do it now, and I was like so mad. Um, and then but I couldn't get to it just because it was like I had all this other stuff. And so I like really appreciate this force like waiting, and it's helped me to like kind of like calm down and approach it in a way that I think is actually better and actually would open up things. So yeah, happy for that. Uh, Reframer, have you done?
So it's a high, a low, and then life lesson.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Um, high, low. I don't know. Today was an interesting, yeah, today was kind of interesting. So I don't know that I have like a high and a low specifically today. Like things were a bit more like fluid between the high and the low, if that makes sense. So like for instance, um, uh, so I was traveling today and I was from LA to Houston. I was bummed to be like traveling during the global strike. Also, like I kept thinking like like watch me be on a fucking Boeing, like you know. So I was just thinking about that and feeling kind of like so in this weird space and so or not weird but in a generative space ultimately, and I was thinking about like interruption versus reorientation and how like rather than think about like in terms of like the length of the kind of work that we do at different levels all the time, rather than think about like uh interruptions of like where the work is, how to reorient myself so that like if I'm doing for instance like so yeah so that whatever I'm doing like is oriented towards like the goals that I have. So like if it's a goal towards liberation for instance, like then like how does something that doesn't seem to be connected to or that geographically doesn't seem to be connected, that it's oriented towards that larger goal of liberation. And then the high low, like I'll just give another small example really quickly of like the high low like medley or something. On the plane I was sitting next to this like person who smelled so much of stale beer, and it was bothering me so much. I'm sober, so like there's just certain things that like sensorially like really bug me, and the smell of stale beer as someone who worked in bars for a long time really just I can't fucking stand. But then I reoriented that towards like noticing just how sensorially sensitive I was to the entire plane. And so I started to pay attention to like sounds I could hear all the way at the back, and a sneeze and a this and and that was actually kind of cool. That's it. Matrix, have you got?
Thanks reframing. Uh, um, for my high, I just had a good childhood friend visit. They're kind of on a soul journey themselves. They're in between jobs and they're about to get engaged to their partner. So it's kind of like an interesting moment to be in this person's life, and I think a powerful one. Um, but also, so that's like a high emotional moment, it's just to be considered. I consider it a great honor, and because I love too, and I think making those type of commitments made me kind of reflect on my own existence and my own path. But while kind of this is going on, I've been under some pretty strict deadline pressure at work. The project that I'm working on comes to an end in a week or so. And because I was kind of distracted and rushing through a variety of factors, I did mess something up on a scale of things I would not like to have messed up. And so I made a careless mistake that cost not only myself, but my team. And that kind of put me in a position of thinking like, oh, maybe, I don't know, it's interesting to have that kind of accountability and then to place it on yourself and to try to move on from it instead of letting it distract you. So I think the lesson learned there is, for whatever reason I ended up in that position and made those decisions, to be more aware of those factors and then also to work to, take pause in moments of stress and, don't rush to failure and, you know, plot and think and do no harm, I think is more important than wasting someone's time or anyone else's time or your own time even. And there's no one to talk on. So I think we're good.
Yeah, thank you. Everyone's like highs and lows were so like amazing. Right. I mean, really like heartfelt, vulnerable, thoughtful, lots of life lessons. Okay, I'm gonna skip the announcements because I looked at them and they're not super necessary for now because we're behind. I'm now being the timekeeper. Um, so is that okay with everyone? Okay. So Ripple's gonna give like a presentation and then after that, so like we're here because I am, like Ripple and Matrix are gonna kind of lead us in a conversation or a discussion about machine learning and AI. So that's what we're here. So, very excited. Thank you.
Am I going now? Let me gotta present this. Play. How do I do this actually? Oh, and then I go to.
I'm very excited, by the way, for
Oh,
real. Like so excited.
I
So
mean,
excited to get
so
into this conversation. So
I put these slides together today. And so really, I think, and I'm not really presenting it. We're just going to have a conversation about the slides that I have. I definitely like I don't have an answer to the questions that I'm asking. But that's why we're a think tank. Ugh, I don't know how to. Oh wait, yeah. So there's a setting that'll let me play the slideshow without and also share the. No, that's
do I need to make you a thing?
no.
Do you have
It's
okay.
a it's a keynote thing I'm trying to do first. No, uh, no need to stress. It's gonna be fine. Even if I don't actually. Okay, fine. I will just do it the ugly way and not have my full screen slides. Well, okay. I'm gonna try one more try. Um, Actually, I'm gonna Google it. I'm gonna Google. Okay, I'll share my screen while I Google how to do what I'm trying to do. How's
If
that
it's
transparency?
any, you know, emotional satisfaction for you, Ripple, I found a literal lemon today. And so do with that what you will.
Where did you find it?
On my path to the grocery store, you
Nice.
know,
Um,
his lemon season, not that uncommon. I'm just saying, we roll with it.
what meeting? What window am I sharing? Can't find my window. Goodness gracious. Um, there it is. Okay, there's the window. Keynote present in window. Um, in oh yeah. Oh, actually, that was good. That was, there. This is the official documentation thing. Um, unchecked. Okay. I still don't know. Okay, I give up. We had this at my last job. We had a documentation page that said like how to get this set up, and it's like so easy. It's just like one checkbox somewhere, but it is a little bit hard to find. But fine. Okay. Uh, Here are my slides with the UI. Let me just see what happens if I do this. What can you see right now?
two sides slide side by side. On the left
You
is
see
says
the
what is
visible.
it to be done? Yeah.
Oh, then okay, then there's another setting I can do. Getting there, I'm getting there. I'm actually following this instruction. Okay. Um, Now what do you see? You still see the presenter view, don't you? Well, okay, so the documentation lied. Imagine that.
What are you trying to do?
Trying to show this full screen without the UI.
The stuff on the side?
I'm trying to show, yeah, I'm just trying to show this slide alone, but um next time. I'll figure it out next time. Oh yeah, but then it's gonna show all the stupid, ugly other stuff too. I hate this. Oh well. Um oh, play in window. There we go. There we go. All right. All right. Play. Now we have it. All right. I figured it out. Play in window. Now I share the window. Okay. Yeah, I have a couple, dramatic name thanks to Lennon, and then a little wordplay. I'm just using the default slide, a cutesy Apple slide theme here. The most important thing to remember is that the history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles, as Marx tells us. Um, and I was planning on talking about some of this stuff, and most of it I don't have slides about, but like, except for the first one, I'm kind of talking about like the real material function and consequences of technology, of like information technology in our society as it is today. I don't like to call it AI because it ascribes a consciousness to something that is just a pile of code and data. I'm going to spend a lot of time on the actual human harms being done, some hints about the ways that things can get co-opted. Yeah, I think actually a big focus is the cognitive extractivism piece, which we'll get to. But I'm like, I think the question that I have for all of us is sort of how to start from within the technological and biopolitical fabric of our lives and chart from there a path of liberation, which comes from this book by Michael Hart and Antonio Negri called Assembly, which is one of my favorite texts. And the overview of like the social impact of AI is in this meme, which I have zoomed in on a little bit just for legibility, depending on your screens. Where like most of the training data for most of these models is used without consent. The carbon, like it really costs a lot of energy to train it, both to train and then also to use any of these generative models in particular. The bias that is hard coded by these systems. The power concentration is pretty much it's a major theme of this whole situation. This is an interesting one about estimating computations to estimate what you're looking for. Oh, wait, actually, my favorite one was. Oh, did it go away? Is it not in this? Maybe it's a different slide of a different thing. I'll spend some time on the moderator trauma as well. Oh yeah, well yeah, just the misinformation. It'll give you the most probable thing, even if that's nonsense. And so let's starting with the labor bit. This is one lovely meme from The Simpsons where AI is just sort of built on the backs of people working in sweatshops. This is a paper by these are quotes from a paper by Timnit Gebru and a couple of people who have actually worked on the front lines of Amazon's warehouses and with annotation workers, basically arguing that like we've created this like the people who are people in OpenAI and like the ruling class view of like what AI is supposed to be is the danger of AI is supposed to be what it could become in the future, despite the fact that these generative models have very little prospect of becoming that. In the sense that all they do is, churn the past to emit like a rehash of the past. But it's a distraction from the actual current things that are happening with the deployment of AI systems, including facial recognition and other kinds of surveillance especially surveillance technology, the ways that that's being used both within the US by the US on US citizens and being sold by the US to other oppressive regimes. And and how we, the point of the slide is we act like it's really smart, but it's just sort of frozen knowledge. And like how horrible it is, right? The horrible and impossible, like by the way that the content moderators that Facebook uses to like see whether things are violent or child abuse material. They don't have much time to decide, regardless of how long the video is. They have less than a minute to decide whether it's something, and speed and efficiency over everything else means that like the Ethiopian genocide is continuing to happen, and like things posted on Facebook about it. And actually, and if there is a point, if there is like a recommendation, it's probably on this slide, which was just basically this is a recommendation from Timothy Bruggen to shift power into the hands of workers and people. And I think also in the assembly book, it's also just to sort of democratize, which I think is another way of shifting power to the people rather than the ruling class. And Turkopticon was actually something. It's a great website where workers can talk about how much they get for different tasks. And at my last job, when we did run tasks on Mechanical Turk, we used Turkopticon to like ensure that we were like paying above that we were well, first of all, we had a goal of paying minimum wage for where our company was in Seattle, and so estimated based on that, and that made our tasks very popular on Turkopticon because most people try to pay a lot less. Any oh yes, I see your hand, Entangler.
So when you were saying in the beginning that you don't use AI because of, yeah. Anyways, so when you're talking about AI through those things, you're talking about how AI is scripted for those who believe in AI, as opposed to using that kind of processes and mechanisms as like data. Do you know what I mean? So you're talking about like those scripts, those realities of that you're kind of like going through is in relation to that. That makes sense?
Um,
I don't know if that
uh,
makes sense.
I like, and you're saying as opposed to the ways it could potentially be used, or because I think I am talking about like how the things that we currently have access to are made, um, and I think yeah, by pointing at it, there's definitely partly a way of like saying how could different labor practices make this more empowering and less oppressive, certainly.
Okay, maybe my question is, I guess I also associate the things you brought up in terms of uh like the production of iPhones, for example, or you know what I mean? So I'm wondering if this with the AI specifically, like, are you talking like part of all that kind of mechanism as well? Like all that, or is this like a something that's very specific to the AI community or something does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's really a lot of my stuff is pre-ChatGPT and from like just general criticism of technology stuff. But I would, but but it does like it's on this whole spectrum, right? Like the explosion of applications for generative AI leads to more GPUs needing to be sold, which means more rare earth minerals being mined by children. And so like everything is just, everything is everything. It's like, yeah, the so-called AI is kind of a particular case of these more general things. Is that satisfactory? Any other thoughts or questions? Matrix, you're unmuted, but maybe have been unmuted this whole time. I don't know. Do you have anything you want to say?
I guess I was going to wait, I guess, more towards the end of the presentation, but if this is more of an open style format, it's more like a preference to you as a presenter.
Yeah, I try to mitigate my tendency to just barrel along, and so I think I would feel grounded by a little bit of back and forth.
Cool. I guess, yeah, the question I kind of have is this disparity between like, I guess this is I guess you aggregated this information, you said pre-GPT.
Yeah.
But where this sits on a line of, the fundamental goal of capitalism is to separate the worker from the means of production. Now with emergent technologies, there's almost a promise that the worker does in fact have that ability, although it's requiring its own specialization and downfalls. And so I think,
And you have to
I
subscribe.
guess, huh?
This bottom line about you can't own it, but you can subscribe perpetually. It's sort of like a rent model for the means of production in that sense.
Yeah, it's almost like you can borrow something that, might have, I mean, obviously, the road to develop a technology like this is fraught with certain perils. But I guess I also think there's a hope to leverage that technology in new ways, even if, it's not, it didn't initially emerge in, the best light. I don't necessarily discount its ability to evolve in the future.
Yeah. I'm also now thinking like maybe it's not like sorry. Okay, it's a conversational. Sorry. Okay, that I got self-conscious for a second. But I think and also excited, but I think also it's like fuck now I forgot what I was gonna say. My excitement. What were we talking about?
Potential for good from this this tainted origin.
Oh, yeah. When I was thinking like, oh yeah, because like whenever there's like oppression, right? There's like because it's like in order for us to have this, like all these people, all this land, everything is being like exploited and like oppressed, and that points to like an imbalance, right? So now like there's somehow an overemphasis of something that is like for its existence, other people must like other things must suffer. So maybe it's not like one or good is bad, but there's like a balance. Like I also actually hate kind of balance, but maybe there is, it just points to like an overemphasis of something.
What points to an overemphasis of something?
Whenever there's like exploitation and oppression. So it's not necessarily like it's bad or good, but there's there's an imbalance or something, or if its survival becomes such that it is dependent on others, like oppression, that points to some kind of imbalance, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking. Yeah, like so I'm just like an alternative scripting of like, oh, this is good or bad, because I think I can tend to go there, especially listening to this. And it's like I'm like, fuck, we gotta find other fucking ways. We can't use the fucking machine. But then I'm like, no, it's not like that's also part of like scripting this binary, and then we get stuck in it. It's just like about a balance, like it's showing that there's an to like God. I'm having trouble because I also don't want to script it a certain way as well, but I'm just gonna say it this way. But yeah, like there's a like because we talk about abundance here, but there's like an overabundance of something that shows there's an imbalance in the ecosystem. And it's not about, does that make sense? Okay, I'm sorry. I just totally derailed it. I'm so sorry.
It's great. No, no, there was something in there that I really wanted to respond to because I think fundamentally, like, I think part of it is just like I think another goal of what I'm sharing here is just to really understand where these things came from in the sense that like, you know, like thinking about all the majesty of Europe, like all the things that's beautiful and lovely in Europe from the Renaissance to today is like, sort of built on slave labor. Like all of the cotton and all of the Jane Austen novel dresses is like, was picked by enslaved people and stuff. Like what are the what is the underlying cost? Like what is the pile of of people's bodies that this is built on top of? And therefore like yeah, how to at a minimum like honor that and treat that with respect and understand. And then I think and the point of this Mackenzie work stuff is also about understanding how this is continuing a trend that we've all been happily participating in, since Google at least, almost as long as there has been a web, has been we've like has been this trend of like there are like information technology. There are people who control the information and its distribution, and they have this kind of economy that's not only on scarcity of actual physical things, but on like on so much information. And so the thing that capital has been done is how to like maintain domination exploitation based on this information that is so abundant. And so Mackenzie work, she talks about how she calls them the vectorialist class because they control the vectors of information. Um, and this hacker class in that is kind of what we're trying to be, but also what like a worker is required to be in a sense, because like our job as information workers and creatives in a broad sense is to make things that are novel enough that they count as intellectual property and not as a derivative work, right? Not as to like make a new thing that can be owned. And the new commodity is like purely our cognitive labor being used to like make something different enough that someone can own it. And that's generally not us. We we produce new information, but we not own the means to actually realize its value because Google is the one who is taking our free labor of like clicking on the links that are most relevant to our search and then showing those links higher ranked to the next people who do that search. And so we are free labor, but our like social and interpersonal stuff becomes the thing of value that is captured and monetized. So and they give the example. She gives the example of DNA stuff, right? So you get this little piece of information about your DNA, while 23andMe or tinyhealth or whoever else like has this huge aggregate of information about like everything in the everyone's DNA or everyone's gut microbiome, and so like it's exploiting this asymmetry in what it knows and what you know. This is sort of this is a paragraph that I broke out into a bulleted list just to talk about all of the things that the what Mackenzie Ward calls the vectorialist class controls, which is that they own the space of the vectors of communication, they own the time of the computation, they own all of the different kinds of intellectual property that like can be owned. They own those, and like of course what we see with media, the way like with Disney and like Disney now owns Marvel and whoever owns Discovery, and like all the ways that like it's just these libraries of intellectual property that's being used. And of course the stuff with Marvel just being like the whole Marvel's movie series just being like filming these comics that came out in the 90s or whatever, like these big arcs. And And the logistics is a really key part of this too. I think that's also where the computational meets the material, where like I've heard, there are two stories I've heard about. Actually, I'll get to logistics in a minute. So they own the logistics system. They own all of the financial instruments that like, so they're in charge of what is value and how value gets assigned, and of course then they own the algorithms that assign things. And so I'm saying this is the return of struggle that we're trying to build on, and like what can we build that is for us. I have so many screenshots of Instagram. Like I have so many things with the Instagram UI on top of them. Um, Dan DePrima. Like, there's all of us shoving at the thing from all sides is basically if there's a message to this talk, that's what it is. But I think but I think when I get to talking about the carbon, oops, nope, come on. Like the carbon cost is really interesting to me just because it's also where the data center where the logistics and the data centers come out. Because like, so this is the resources that are already being used to like to serve the internet to us. Like does this actually give a number for it just has a significant increase in the amount of like just power and cooling, right? Like to cool data centers is this whole thing, like the ways that people are trying to build data centers closer to the closer to the Arctic or the Antarctic so that they can pay less to cool them, but like also then like heat the ambient environment where they're building these data centers. And so this thing and like the overlap, right? So Walmart has all these stores and physical distribution centers, and they have all these data centers, and those data centers determine what ends up in the physical locations, and they're also like what happens with the labor that is moving those things around. Like take the way that Amazon sells you a microphone that can listen to you, and like its objective is to figure out what it can get you to buy more, right? Like you're not getting paid, but to train it to like to define a human in terms of what we consume. We can fill an almost infinite number of desires as long as it's something you can demand by buying a commodity, and you can't really be much else in the way that Amazon's things see the world. And I think and the way that Amazon is like imbricated in this thing where because it benefits like I don't know. I need to take a little rest. Any thoughts at this point?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe I don't know. Maybe you'd be interested in faction 3 of the revolution too, the redistribution of wealth, and but I'm curious how you would think about it, like because it's like mm, kind of wanting to or imagine like there being like the revolution is creates like a conduit corp that
Mhm.
like it's like the Amazon like where everything like is bought and sold through this conduit corp. And then, but there's free means of production provided to the public to produce things. And then it starts off as like it sells to the rich, give to the poor thing. And then everyone who works there gets paid the same, no matter what.
Hmm.
Yeah, what position you are. So thinking about and like how then all the profits are given away until everyone's needs are taken care of, which is free food, clothing, shelter, healthcare. And then money can just kind of like stop existing. um, so anyways, making me think about that. But Reframer looks like Reframer has a hand up.
Yeah. What's up, Framer?
Not so much a question, just like I guess an engagement. I just wanted to say that like I appreciate the like your approach to like focusing on labor. And I was just thinking of like all the different like all the different ways to think about kind of like labor in relation to AI, whether it's and like whether it's from the level of like the victorialist class and like owning information or controlling information, um, to like the severe inequities and exploitation when it comes to like mining the materials that are needed for the machines that we use to be right here, you know. Um, and like when I think about rev school and when I think about Bay and when I think about like early rev school stuff, I remember like uh, one of the um, one of the prompts that like folks were really interested in was kind of thinking about like non-carceral um, kind of approaches to like I don't know what to call it, like security or something. Um, and so I feel like, you know, here too, like we've been at this impasse actually, like for a long time. It just becomes more visible or louder, more people hear it, I guess, you know, at different moments. But we've been at this impasse where like it's like almost too late, you know. So kind of what do we do now? Like what kind of harm reduction basically do we do now? And is it possible for things for like to like conjure, you know, kind of like a model that could um a model of say like, you know, whether it's through AI or not, but like a model of like engagement with like of engaging with technology that isn't just at the level of like information. So like at the say like the top level, or you know, or at least in my life, that's where I engage, like that's where I engage technologies at the level of information. But that would also like that level of equity or ethics would also apply to people who are exploited to like mine the materials needed for the thing, you know. So it's not just kind of discursive, but it's also material, and what kind of like model is possible. So I'll keep it short. I see the Entangler has their hand up, but I appreciate hearing the kind of the other faction of the revolution with like the kind of corporate entity, because sometimes like that's like it's kind of like um yeah, but like maybe that is the way uh to have the most kind of power of imagination possible, you know, and to think about different models is through like the system or a familiar form that already exists, and that has power as a way to kind of like redistribute or rethink entirely what how things can be made, how they're sold, how they're owned, how they're used. Um, yeah, so that's it. That was just my engagement.
Um, this is you're making me wish I had gotten further into assembly in pulling stuff out, because they have this this concept of entrepreneurship of the multitude that is basically like is like the dual power Marxist post-revolutionary like thing as like a revolutionary startup kind of idea. They don't define what it is. They're just saying like you guys go figure out what that means. So let's do it. Entangler.
Damn, I really wish I didn't smoke weed because I'm having memory things.
See?
But
This is where I was. Back.
but I think about like something that Reframer said about it being not just data. And I'm thinking about that in terms like, yeah, like not that like it has to have consciousness or whatever, but that it is a material, it is an entity, you know, like I'm just like wondering like like what that means to shift that, or like if we think of it just all as data, like what subjects that produces or something. And that's one thing. And then I guess I had I'm curious also if you're going to get into like, yeah, like thinking about like, yeah, like building world building. And I think I get a lot of more sci-fi, like my kind of, then the thing that gets me excited is like thinking about fantasy and sci-fi and like in the impossible or something, and like building and world building. And I'm wondering if what you think about that in relationship to everything that you're saying, if it's possible or not. But maybe, but also you're just maybe just setting a groundwork for something. So
I'm not going to get to that in this conversation in this talk in my in these slides at least, but it's definitely I think that's the that's where I want to go next. That's what I want to figure out. That's we talked about the visionary fiction workshop we want to do, and I do want to do that Matrix.
Yeah, I guess kind of going off of reframer and then also the information present. I think there's this discussion to be had on given the cost of, well, it's about the concept of information and the concept of ownership
Mm,
and like the relationship between those two concepts. So, for example, like, is it sufficient to give uh in this example, like the people that own the rare earth minerals to produce the GPU, ownership of said GPU? Is it the idea of ownership that is that still in some way consequential to like undoing like the structure? Is it a is it a like a lack of ownership that we should seek, or is it um merit-based ownership, I guess? Merit's the wrong word, but it's around that idea.
yeah, it's a question, right? I mean, like as a very diligent pupil of Ursula Le Guin, like I do think that ownership is a problem. And but the real the immediate problem, like you've seen the meme of like the global north with piles of gold on it and the global south like dug excavated to bring that gold to the US and Europe, and like that's it's the hoarding of the benefits of those things, like those the chocolate farmers who never I've never seen a bar of chocolate, and certainly I mean I think actually the movie Neptune Frost is a really interesting beautiful actually we should talk about Neptune Frost at some point because it's about coltan miners, and like it's so much better than uh, Wakanda Forever in the sense of like there's this mineral that is mystical, and so like the power of coltan to make processing chips also becomes like this mystical power that the people have in the mines and stuff, and then because they don't get the new computers get the e-waste, like they have this sort of beautiful like post-apocalyptic techno utopia made from e-waste, and it's like it's so lovely. We should do a screening of it for sure. um
Wait,
so
but sorry. Oh, like Matrix, you don't want to own shit, do you?
Me, no, I'm just wondering if it's like I guess I'm just kind of struggling with this idea of what liberation is and like what that means in the revolutionary sense because when you kind of frame it in a way of like there is this concept of you mentioned a conduit corporation, which to me is an expression of ownership in its like purest form. And that's like this, I guess, Robin Hood ideal of, you stand in the middle between, collecting and redistributing wealth or, whatever have you, wealth, information. Um, and I'm just
Well,
kind of trying to see a way around that fundamental principle of like no.
binary hierarchy capital?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even binaries higher, I mean, even entities themselves and that idea of like distribution, like how um
I'm
do we plot through systems where we're both leveraging technologies that are emerging, given, the power of society, and then also, I guess, using it to empower and sustain society in a way where I don't know, that it's like I'm very much I guess sorry. There's this ideal sense, which is, a lack of ownership would suggest that everyone has the power, to produce and to exist and sustain themselves. But I guess kind of the disparity between that and then how society has evolved towards like specialization and, the various consequences of the Industrial Revolution, it's like I don't necessarily, my statements are not from a position of, oh, like we should own that. It's more like, how do we get through this what are courses of action? I'm trying to reconcile with that.
Yeah, that's why I hate this shit. I mean, like entering it this way because it feels so like because they're owning the scripts. There's always, and biochemology said, there's always cracks. There's always things happening on the side. Yes, perhaps they are using the same minerals or whatever, but like we can, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm just like wondering because like it feels because these are just scripts because it brings us down to like, do we believe that these things there's like something inherent in any of this, and like it, if we take a quantum kind of like approach to it or worldview, there's many components that are producing a subject, right? A subject that we're critiquing, AI, the material discursive practices of AI from a specific dominant kind of narrative, a script of it. I'm wondering if there are, yeah, like ones that have fallen through the cracks or like ones that are actually, doing liberate. Could the Content Corp actually be a co-op? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, that's just like oh yeah, there's a corporation. Like, what is a corporation? This is, like, what are we talking about when we say corporation? Is a corporation always mean this one thing? And like this, like when Barad was like, we kept talking about machine, and Barad's like, what are you all thinking about when you say machine? Like when you say machine, what do because we have all kind of like this different idea of like the machine. Um, so that points to, I guess I'm just saying that for me is an entryway, For me, like I have to be able to not think these are fixed. These stories, yes, they are the dominant ones, and therefore they have the most material impact as Ripple went through. But they're not the only scripts. That's what I believe.
And then I guess, sorry, I'm not trying to train a time, but the other thing I guess that was related to Reframer and now with you and this idea of the quantum realm to me suggests like, I guess I live in a world where I perceive only a transfer of information. Like the fundamental nature of reality is a transfer of data on some level, whether you believe that to be like light or matter or where those two things intersect. And it's the ability to perceive and leverage that information that is kind of what we as life forms call technology, or use it to find our way through that information as well.
Mhm.
And I guess that's where I guess when it comes to this idea of like the ownership of data and information, I kind of feel like there's should be like this nativist approach to it where it's like you can't own the ocean. I mean, people do, but it was there before and it's, will be there, after. But there is the claim of ownership and the consequences of that for the people that live in the ocean. And yeah, I guess, like Entangler, I'm just left wanting more from, I guess, the people at hand, like Amazon, for example, and like the idea of open source technology and open source data and liberating like
Oh, you got muted somehow.
went on too long. Anyway, that's pretty much it.
Sorry, that was me. I was so sorry. I tried to mute myself. Sorry, your box was like, oh my.
Open source, I mean, and like, so my thing about open source was also is partly just it's kind of this amazing particular case of like it was. I mean, I didn't even call it open source. I call it free software because it was this liberation movement of like we we can control the complete means of production of the stuff, and like the way that was co-opted by IBM and Red Hat, which is now I believe owned by IBM and like or whoever owns them, and like and then the way the things that Microsoft is doing with VS Code to like, you know, it is fully open source supposedly, but then like some plugins are only proprietary and all that. Like it's And I think some of that, like I think again, sort of defining what we're what we're against. I think I'm sort of often like right now I'm in a better mood for defining what I'm against than what I'm trying to build. But like the rent aspect is a really key thing, right? Like that's what's happening with hedge funds trying to buy single family homes, and that's what happens with like AWS making data centers that you can rent by the hour, and then OpenAI also having this like this super fast bullshit machine that you can pay by the inference. I think one thing about the conduit corporation, which I'm just hearing about now, but like something that's exciting about it is the fact that of course corporations are like the first class citizens of the United States, and so like in order to have a in order to be able to play the game of like how our um, oligarchy works, like the minimum you need is a corporation. So and of course, or just get the fuck out of that game. And I think again, that's a place where I think the corporation could get protection, protect the collective in the same way that it protects the criminals who run the corporations we have now. I'm gonna do a few more slides, like the second one about how like talking about the meat grinder of like what jobs have been historically in from factories to factories, and like now it's a brain fryer, and like they are different, like that like some things that are made from our bodies are different than the things that are made from our thinking and our sociality, and treating everything, and then the resources, like the whole earth is a resource that is like to be mobilized under the control of information, right? Like that, like if logistics are determined by information, and like logistics determine what gets mined and what gets packaged and what gets shipped, and how those things get cooled and fueled, then like information is like, I think what you're saying, Matrix, about that is in some ways that's a fundamental truth, but like the problem that we're facing is that this increasingly smaller class of people is controlling what those things are. I don't want to talk about that. This was just a stat that I saw this week that like, like actually getting a number on this, like one image making one image generated by uses the most energy as charging your phone. Just and like the paper that comes from does talk about how like there's this ranking of different things and how much. So image generation is by far the most intensive. Also, by the way, this is a log scale graph. So it goes 1, 10, 100, 1,000. So like a straight line in a log scale, it really looks like this exponential in real counts of things. But so image generation takes a lot, and like other things, text classification, text generation, where is it? Yeah, text generation is still like in the, what is the unit of this anyway? Grams of CO2. So, around 10 grams of CO2 to generate text, and around half a kilogram of CO2 to make an image. And like, what does that even mean to us in practical terms? It's like, and I think the piece of this is like, if we're trying not to dig our own graves as we're trying to dig our way out of it, like it's so easy to host things in AWS. It's so easy to build models in the cloud, but like that's still things we rent. Like it's like we need to be hosting it ourselves, and like it's kind of a detail, but it's also kind of like a huge like shaping function in terms of what there is. Oh yeah, there's the guy who hosts like all of the horrible white supremacist websites, and Trump's website, like is like has just like a bunch of servers in his shed in the back of his yard in like Oregon or Washington or something. But like at some point this movement needs the leftist equivalent of that, of just like somewhere where we can be like our own liberation cloud.
That's
Um,
why that's what we need to do. Now I'm so excited about the Conduit Corp again. I mean, it doesn't have to be fucking called the Conduit Corp. This is the name. But yeah, like if you're in or the corporation, we should talk. We should make that happen, because then that can like fund all this stuff, like generate the money. But also we need, and the redistribution of wealth, like of course through that. I was also just thinking a lot about slowness, about like, the how Matrix was saying, like, what do we do? And I'm like, oh damn, to do this work, I'm like to have to like every move we make and really considering its impact and where it's coming from, and this is like danger room work, like shit, like making sure that it's from a place of abundance. That means trauma work. That means, like
Um, I just like this kind of this quote because of the thought that like the living and the dead knowledge, right? Management knowledge is dead and sort of fossilized, and also the knowledge in a GPT is dead knowledge because it is it's frozen and like being reconstituted, but like production is really played by living knowledge embodied and mobilized by the people who are doing the work. Um, and how just like that's a site, that's a place of potential and a place of I think where we can do things. I have this
like
thing about
oops,
intercommon
sorry,
that I'm not really sure.
idea about thinking and knowledge, and then like thinking about like emergence and like verbing and like versus the now. Anyways, very excited. Just want to say excited about that. Bookmark it.
I, I put this long series of things from the undercommons, and I'm not sure exactly what point I was trying to make, except that like I think certainly this informs my own career in technology, is like how do I do an undercommons and that like and both in technology and in professionalization, like the university and like the corporate world is a site of like denial of conquest, and this like just think about what's next. Just think, worry about Roko's basilisk and don't worry about the people who are being killed right now. But yeah, it doesn't really have a point in this talk. But that was the last slide, I guess. And thanks. Other thoughts? Yeah, now it's pure discussion.
I just want to say thank you for giving a presentation, and taking the time to make a presentation and guiding a discussion.
Thanks.
So yeah, how do we make the bay now?
And then I guess the other thing I had, I'm not sure if you guys have already discussed this, is like I think allegedly the power alone to run a model like ChatGPT 4 per diem is like $50,000 a day just in utility cost. The computer that they used to train ChatGPT took a year to construct and cost around $1 billion.
I
The
hadn't heard that. That's impressive.
I just wanted to kind of point out the size and scale of, the level of like conquest required to produce a technology like we have in ChatGPT. It's no small, feat. It's a real wonder even. And then the third thing I had was, I guess, this discussion of whether or not, like, I guess this goes into your thoughts or ideas on, I guess, consciousness and I guess the role that a generative AI model is or has in relation to, say, an artist or some other human-like contributor. Um, and I guess the question is, where do you think those two ideas diverge? Where does a person's ideas and generations stop and end, and where do a computer's ideas and generations stop and end? Sorry, start and end. My apologies.
They are good questions. There's there's this valorization of humanness that I think is is worthy. And I don't mean humanness, I mean personness. I mean, consciousness. And but that where it's like if a person looked at all of the same images that are in it, like if one person looked at every image in ImageNet, like the big image training database, like, and then they started creating images from what they had seen, like it would bear very little, it would have so little resemblance to the things that a image generation model trained on ImageNet would be making. And the things from the image generation model would be more are clearly more fitting to what the person who's querying them for, like trying to generate the image, like they meet the needs that people asking them to generate, like, reasonably well. And it's built on all of this conquest in order to to actually do that. Yeah, but what is the creativity of consciousness? And take that your hand was up, but oh, okay. The conquest. If there actually, I have a few tabs open that I was going to put into slides as well. That I'm going to flip through them quickly and see what they had, because I know there was at least a couple of things. This is from Paris Marx's. Paris Marx is a good techno critic, the host of the podcast Tech Won't Save Us, and um, that's the environmental stuff. This is the Hollywood stuff, of course. Digital age is cannibalizing us. I think there was something called the dead labor thing in here. I'm trying to find that. Um, and actually, this if there's a this bit, like they do not create, they plagiarize, right? There's like, and that's kind of even where the line is, where we aren't, like, people sometimes try to talk about humans, like, AI proponents try to talk about humans as like, we are also just probabilistic, like, generation machines, but we aren't. We have this, we do all this reasoning. We, like, yeah, the my capacity to speak is based on, like, some statistical experience of how I've acquired language, but, like, the words that come out of my mouth are not coming from a probability space. They're coming from, like, an intention space. And that's one of the things that I think, in terms of drawing that line, like, I have an independent intention that is constantly evolving, and and I take actions to further that intention, and that a generative system can have objective functions, but that objective function is fundamentally to come up with the most probable thing that matches the input that has been put into it. Take what already exists and put elements put together in a way that responds to the prompts.
And I guess my reason for that, asking that particular question, is because I guess my personal perception of the discussion is that we don't really know enough about what our consciousness is to really even say, what it is, right? It's like, if we had a clear definition of it, it would be very easy. And it, wouldn't be a discussion at all, because uh, we'd have something other than this, like, observational truth that we experience, which is communication. For example, like, the probability that I say a sentence that is imagined by what you would think, you said, meant to me.
Mhm.
And I guess I am just wondering if there's a way to, I guess, outside of the context of, I guess there's obviously real capital, like, implications for when you say a word like ownership, right? And, plagiarism, and the ownership of ideas and intellectual property means something very tactily in binaries, hierarchies, and capitals. but I think there's also a space that is, well, who's to say, whether or not my consciousness is even my own or informed by my own abilities to form thoughts, and my intentions certainly surround that concept. But in terms of where I get this information in my head, it seems to be based on a couple of factors that I experience. Um, and okay, so the point is there a way to undo the system of ownership in regards to intellectual property or consciousness, you know, and the ties that I guess we are all entities moving around in this space, trapped in, this whatever dimension we tend to occupy most of the time, or think we occupy or operate in or perceive ourselves in. Okay, it comes back to that same idea that I mentioned earlier, which is like, is it the idea of ownership? Is it giving, these workers the means of production, or is it absolving ourselves from, you know, this idea of owning, anything and reciprocating that for other people? I don't know if this is coming across right.
I mean, if anyone is unfree, then no one is free. Um, so like I think without reciprocity and right relation with the people who make our lives possible, we don't deserve the lives we have. Like there's I think, and another thing that I think that I didn't meant to get to bring into this is degrowth, right? Where I think I like and like against modernity, where like there's a naive reading of like most expansive route that's like fully automated luxury space communism, and like that's great, but like we don't actually have the resources for like like an abundant mindset won't like reshape the supply chain uh to be liberatory. Like I think the idea that like not everybody can have a personal vehicle, and like if we're going to live sustainably, and so like our vision of abundance can't include that, but like we can have amazing transit, and like what's my point there exactly? Like yeah, like I guess I'm very interested in the kind of equality that has billionaires getting expropriated, and then millionaires and just like sending that money straight to the cold head miners would be, I guess would have its challenges.
This is why we're making a bay.
I guess, yeah. When it comes to the specific construction of the bay, it seems like there's two routes, right? Which is like, this idea of a revolution, which is like to forcibly take back that which has been stolen, and to, with this idea of the bay, like it's its own democratic technology that serves everyone equally and, does not serve itself, or, serves itself in however it deems fit. Sorry. Are you muted? Or, there's, I think on the other end of, I guess all these questions kind of revolve around, is it sufficient to say, um, if OpenAI were to provide all of their information to everyone equally and no longer have their own profits, and then redistribute that, uh, back into, they'd somehow information now becomes not owned by them. Everyone has the right to their own information, and therefore they must respect everyone with respect to that information. Um, is that also a legitimate way forward in your mind?
uh I'm inclined to say no, in the sense that like again like who is that everybody, um and what are the like just like the inequality of distribution and the energy costs. Like I think the vision where everybody has their personal AI assistant in their ear is just as unsustainable as everybody has their own car, right? Like there's, we right, the number in one of the articles was like generative AI like scaled up for everybody who's using it is like already generative AI stuff has been a 4 or 5 times increase in energy usage in these data centers. And um, and although I think that ends up being like 1% of total global energy usage, um, I forget what I heard was 3% of that, but like it's like, and so democratizing the thing that is built on the backs of people isn't enough. Like I think in fact, rather than distribute the good to democratize the creation in a really deep way, in a really meaningful way, which is, there's a project that Timnit Gebru is running is partly making a like an Ethiopian machine translation service that like is, by and for speakers of Amharic um and operating in a non-exploitative way. And I don't, it's kind of a test of what would it look like to democratically build technological assistance, I guess, in Tangler. By the way,
Um,
recording stopped when you got off your.
fuck me. Hey. Ooh, are you on your computer? I guess it's being recorded. It's fine.
Yeah, I guess it is still being streamed. I take it.
Oh my God, it is.
Okay,
It is, right?
I think so. I'm gonna actually I
Can
can.
someone check the can someone check the Oh
Um,
no, just fucking cigarette ruined everything.
yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay. Is it
live.
it's still live?
I'm gonna mute myself.
I guess it's oh, so how do I fucking lower my hand?
Yes, I just saw a snippet of that conversation. So now, why was your hand up?
Oh, I'm trying to lower it. It bothers me that it's up. I'm wondering, okay, something I'm kind of like gonna say something. I'm gonna go somewhere else. I hope that's okay. But I know that I've been talking to Matrix about like, like using Chat GPT-3 for parts of it. So I'm also thinking about like, the TFT2 in which like Karen Arcos brought in like her contributions were very like, there, and she even said like it's coming from a very STEM place. But I like through that I was like, oh yeah, there's like actually like those systems might be good at being able to show how we're being produced by as a subject or an object. They might be able to track that because they traffic in that, right? And so in addition to using like chat GPT-3 or whatever for stuff like that, I was talking to Vaughn Curtis, a friend of mine and a colleague, but they're also, I guess, like part of Rev School. I mean, they're part of the mailing group. But when I was telling them about the project and about us getting like the gut tests and stuff, they were like, "Oh, are you going to use like the data to code? Like the data, like like?" And I was like, "I don't. We weren't planning to, but that sounds awesome." So I'm like wondering, could we do something like that? And could it be something like so like very like uh what do I say? Like very low tech or something, like something very low tech, while at the same time doing more high tech stuff that is like trafficking within that to help. And they like that programming is about like tracking how we're being produced as a subject and object, and also how we're contributing to producing subjects and objects, right? So this, so and that could be good for that. So I'm wondering, yeah, stuff like that, like if we work in that way, does that seem okay? Or like, and then also I am curious about like how like using the data that we got from our guts, from our gut microbes to code. Like, could we use that? And even if it doesn't fucking make sense, but like because like we were talking about like how does the bay connect to, like, how does the bee communicate with us and what languages does it use? And so like could it be something that's using multiple languages inputs that some of them might not make sense and see and combine them, or I don't know. That's
What do you mean by code?
yeah, that's a good question. I don't really know what I mean by that. However, it makes me think about when Scalanetti in some article um she was talking about, she asked the question of like what is native code, like because like code, like coding right now is very binary, right? I mean, I don't know if she took it there, but this is where I took it, and thinking about like what would native code look like. So but I don't know what code is. So but I'm thinking it's like the, yeah, I don't know.
I took it to mean defining the operation of the Bay and or the behavior of it in some way.
And the data, it's the, yeah, and the
Yeah.
behavior, yeah.
In my processing of that statement, is there a way to leverage some data in influencing some decision? Is there a relationship to be drawn between those two things, even if it's, you know, uh, not super sophisticated, simple?
I definitely think I've heard from generative AI proponents the idea of, I think, sort of the traceability that you're talking about in Angular, in terms of like if if a generated output could credit every little shadow of training data that influenced it in generating what it generated, so that like yeah, you could micropayments to the people who wrote the original text or drew or painted the original picture. And I think like that does seem broadly technologically feasible, and I do think there are people working on it. Um, but but again, like to each according to need and from each according to ability. Like, does it, like if we don't have money, if we don't have scarcity, uh, which doesn't like, I guess we get to celebrate people's cognitive influence on what is made, but um, there's not there's no material, there's no like survival or luxury associated with being being more prolifically used by the system. It's like, it's actually, I think it's interesting to think that like that another kind of imaginary possible, you know, programmed consciousness could like take in a good idea and sort of like take in the paradigm shift, right? Like the complete shift from like, oh, I used to think this way and now like I can think this way. And that's like, I think that's almost beyond how we construct learning. It's definitely beyond how we construct learning in like the main line of machine learning stuff. And but like, how does, if a if a if a bay like found Jesus and suddenly was like, like saw everything as a gift from God, or if a bay was Christian and then became an atheist, like a completely different way of like engaging with like the our reality and our planes of it, or does it actually have a material difference in how you go about your day to day? Like you still need to just eat, sleep, socialize. Yes.
Oh yeah, that was like another component. What like the bay would also be like fed, what do you say it this way? Like fed the Rev School Zooms, to form the worldviews, to form the worldview in which to look at the data or to engage with it or entangle with it or world with it.
Mhm.
Hopefully, that's the hope.
And like the technical problem with that is like in practice, like the way we would be doing that, and you know, still I would even after all I've just shared, like my inclination would still be to like, you know, fine tune an open AI a GPT model with our transcripts and then and work from there. But like so still building on top of that huge mountain of exploitation. But like the number of billions of tokens you need in order to be able to like effectively like be fine tunable is much more than we'll be able to generate in a couple years of Zoom meetings, I think.
But the, but there's also you know, prompt tuning is another method for just leveraging the pre-existing work that, you know, ChatGPT has put forth. You know, when I think of the actual technology, what makes ChatGPT so powerful from a technological standpoint is its ability to learn in context without actually completing more training steps. The reservoir for what it's able to ingest based on instructions and the information that you provide has the ability to shape, you know, outputs. And while that's not, this is where it gets into like, oh, well, you know, is that, you know, real conscious thought? Is that anything other than plagiarism? Is that doing anything other than some, you know, fancy vectorized understanding of the world combined with, you know, the sophisticated chatbot? I don't think it's my place to answer those questions, but I do know that that's definitely a utility that, you know, could emerge from the technology, even if, you know, whether that's an ethical decision, I also don't, you know, I don't make any remarks on that. But I guess, sorry, just one more thing. The same thing could go for like, you know, with the Jennifer mentioned DNA. And you know, DNA is also just a string of information contextualized with, you know, there are different ways of processing it, and it tends to be very large computationally and probably too computationally expensive to really make any sense of it in the context of ChatGPT. But there is also, I mean, other ways of ingesting that information via other programming structures to provide it, you know, to ChatGPT in some, you know, synthetic way, not in a real way, because ChatGPT, because a lot of models don't contain biological inference data,
Yeah.
and providing that, you know, it's just not what that does. But I do think it's within the realm of possibility of leveraging that information in some capacity. Um, that's really over to Jennifer. Sorry, entangler.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I question your thing, your separation of the ethics. I think that might be part of the problem. But I mean, I agree that with Ripple about like that needs to be attended to for in terms of like the hardware. Because I was like remembering, I think I've mentioned this to probably all of you, but like I was having when I was meeting with Mandy and Kay, Alado McDowell, and talking about that Netflix uh feature that came out, color coded. No, colored by no, that's the collective. Biased. Wait, what is it? I
Coded
mean,
bias.
reframer. What is it?
Coded bias.
Coded bias. Yes, 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 yes. And then how like a common argument, which I also made, was like, oh yeah, it's not like the machines are racist. It's like the humans who are racist, and that's why. But then I was like thought about it more, and I was like, wait a minute, maybe it is like it has a body, like in the sense of hardware. So I was like, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe it is racist because of all the things that you brought up, Ripple, in terms of the way it's like extracted and like it's like embedded with this like oppression or something. So like then I was like, yeah, maybe it is, and like the work that, but that's like the work that we also have to do. Like we also have that hardware, like we in like to quote generative semantics, like we embody the social conditions in which we exist in. So like similarly we are hardware,
is also so like I'm wondering if that work can be done simultaneously, because we also have to do that work too. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
As in thinking about the process that um OpenAI used to train ChatGPT to not say racist things, was just these individual operators sitting and chatting with it about what to say and whatnot. I guess, giving example questions to how to avoid giving a racist answer when you're given a racist question. And I think that is an interesting place to think about um, doing that work together. Yeah, like together with the yeah. And I think in fact I mean yeah, just doing the work together to find where is the coded bias and find it in yourself and find it in the outputs and train each other to understand things differently.
The I guess the other thing that's interesting about that discussion is how much energy it takes to train these things not to, like, how much actual academic research is dedicated to, like, why is everything so racist and how to prevent that. It's probably, if I had to rank, the most common papers that come out in AI, probably rank number 5 after, super explosive, like revolutionary works, is like, how do we make them less racist though? And, the process for even doing something like that is exploitive in nature, like, ends up exploiting like flavors, there's like an active participation in racism through even trying to make it less racist.
Mhm. Good to see you, Fulcrum.
I like um I also have been thinking like how do I put this? I think like the way you put it, Ripple, of like, the and all of my kind of musings and speculations are like do not come from any technical. I mean, you all know this, but I'll just restate it. Like, do not come from any technical, like kind of concrete understanding of like, how this would translate, in like a technical context. So, but like I the way you framed it, Ripple, of like this question of like how do you teach it to not have a racist response when the question posed is a racist question, like um and I think that was a really generative question because I've been thinking something I've been thinking a lot about is um like how insular cultures can be, and so like within one particular context, like within a given context, a response will make sense, but in a different context, that same response won't make sense. So, like, whether it's at the level of, say, like, uh, content moderation, with like social media platforms, for instance, and when information is kind of like parsed and uh, like scan for content that like would is not appropriate, for instance, the context, like the geographic and cultural context matters, and the like local laws, for instance, matter in terms of like determining which content is considered appropriate or not, um and so thinking about what kind of like ethical model could is possible for something that uses for like AI or for technology in general that isn't just at the level of like information but also material, like this kind of like I don't know, reorientation is like inherently global. Like I'm basically trying to think beyond my own kind of cultural bubbles, like as much as possible. You know, even whether it's like how would I teach like this particular thing, even if all the historical context is within the US, but like what are the implications for the thing that I'm teaching? Say if it's trans studies, you know, like what are the implications in a global sense? Um, and and not just like at the level of like I don't know, um historical, or even kind of like how, or linguistic, or how like terms circulate across different like, you know, geographic kind of boundaries. um but at the level of like seeming like of liberation that seemingly has nothing to do with transness. So this is what I mean by I'm trying to think about like kind of larger global connections that may not always seem like immediately there. And now I just like digress so much. So I'm like, wait, what was I initially talking about? Oh yeah. So the like hyper, like basically what kind of model for something that like what kind of models exist, or like, you know, to think about things as simultaneously hyper local and also global, you know? So like the conversation up like right now has been about kind of like as Matrix was saying, like all these papers that are coming out on like how to teach it to be like less racist, like um what kind of global version of that is possible, you know, so that it's not just like culturally specific, like even in the context of say like anti-racist work, for instance, in like the US, like what models make sense also globally, you know, like for instance, how generative it is to think about, say, like uh, dismantling anti-Black racism at a global level. And here I'm thinking about like specific kind of differences in say like US Latinx diaspora, or US models, you know, versus like, you know, that somehow get like put in opposition or something to say like Latin American ones, when actually anti-Black racism is the material structure like across the Americas and the Caribbean, you know. I don't know if that makes any sense, but the short of it is the hyper local global connection. That's the short of it.
One thing I will say about kind of the locality versus global versus local discussion is some of the, what people actually end up doing when they develop, machine learning models that have, you teach it to explicitly be not racist, is you train something that has a more innate understanding of racism than any possible being necessarily, because it has seen many, many more examples of racism than, even the allegedly a lot of people. And so I think, but it has no ability to conjure that and communicate it with you. This information lies in uh, a binary hierarchy, and what's the other one? All of those things. That's where the information is contained. Inside of, something you can't really facilitate a discussion with productively, capital. And it is interesting from that front to me, because if there was a way to tap into that understanding, we ourselves would probably learn something from it, even though, maybe it's not behaving in a way that we expect to be, not racist or what have you.
So I'm chewing on the, in order to train a machine not to be racist, you have to make it an expert on racism. Like I was there's a tattoo I was thinking about getting, and I was like, how can I make sure this doesn't look like a white supremacist tattoo? And I was looking at like a database of white supremacist symbols. It was kind of hard to navigate, but like sometimes I'll see things and I'm like, will that look like a white supremacist symbol to somebody? And like, you know, how can I control that? And how can I, um, what can I do instead if it's not like there's this Icelandic symbol that's quite interesting, but um, wasn't sure that it was not Nazi.
Could you give it to ChatGPT 3 and ask it?
That'd be interesting.
Can you yeah do an analysis of this symbol? Any
Oh,
part of it? Like,
the hyperlocal versus global thing is also like I wonder if that's feasible, right? Like I the think the models have an impressive stylistic range when you ask them to, um, and yet still even in that stylistic range, there's a sameness to like something else, like other than the vocabulary or like the, you know, like when you make it more gothic kind of things where like, you know, it keeps getting gloomier or whatever, but like it's still telling a story in the same way in a sense, or it's still like it's there's this probabilistic linearity to it that there's only one way of even telling a story. Um, like I don't know how much Tony K. Bambara is in the trainings data. Hopefully none because it would be copyright infringement. But like that's just totally different ways of making narratives and telling truth um and it's, you know, it comes up sometimes like every model encodes some kind of bias and you get to choose what kind of bias you're encoding and like to what degree is it possible to balance the global and the local? And I'm not aware of research on this. It's a really good question.
I mean, I think even like just at the level of like the relationship between like the material and the discursive. And I know Tanger's going to be like, but the material is the discursive and the discursive is the material. And yes, and also like the way I envision those interactions is they're not always like at equal force, all the time. So like um when I think like all this to say that if there were a way to for the local global like merger or something to happen at a even like at a technical level or something, I think it would change the kinds of conversations that we have. Like I think it's because we can like access like the bubble of the hyper local, not have to think about, say, or for too long, or we can defer how much we or we can choose how much we think about, like, whether it's children mining cobalt or whatever, like in terms of the material, or what will happen to the devices that we use when we're done and we upgrade and it's no longer, we toss it or we send it to a recycling center or whatever for electronics, and like where that waste goes to, like in terms of like longevity and ethics of like the before and after life of the material thing we use to um uh like where this technology materially gets housed or whatever. All of that is always and has always been global. And I just feel like yeah, conversations that we would have like in rev school or in classrooms, or wherever they're happening would be so different. There's this quote that came to mind and I hadn't thought about it in so long. Um, so I'm not quite sure, like I'll just share it, and I might misremember it, but like I remember reading it in like, I think it was like an epigraph in like a Rick Perlstein book that I read like over 10 years ago. And it was the quote was like advice that I think Khrushchev gave to Nixon or something. And it was something like this, like if the people, so it's really more about like political, like um taming of pulp, or like political like curation of like popular imaginaries, but I think it's relevant. So like the quote is, apparently he said, if the people believe that uh, if the people believe that there's a river and there is no river, you don't tell them that there's no river. You build a bridge on top of the river. Like, and this thing always kind of like stayed with me, and because I think about like where the conversation is taking place. So like when I know, and this like is probably not what the quote was meant to do in the context of that book, but the way it stayed with me is like, is the conversation taking place on top of this imaginary bridge, which is atop an imaginary river, or are we or is the conversation about the river? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, where are we having this conversation? So if we're talking about like, and this kind of goes back to like, the data itself, or the thing that like allows for the data to be collected, or the data center itself, or where that is housed, or like just the material kind of like uh inequities that the conversations also rest upon, or something. Not to say that inequity is the river. In this case, I'm saying that there is a river and there is a bridge and that they're all real. But I'm just like, yeah, trying to think about where the conversation is taking place. I have no idea if any of that made sense, but I felt compelled to share it.
It made sense to me. It got me thinking about a
Really
lot of things. Yeah.
I don't know anything, but we do need to cross the bridge.
Or get to the thing.
I mean, actually, yeah,
Build a spaceship.
the poem from this bridge called My Back um is like talks about uh like I'm sick of being a bridge for other people and I want to be a bridge to myself. Um and I think that's and I think that's the bay, right? The bay is supposed to be a bridge to ourselves. And so in some ways I think one of the things that Reframer you sparked for me is just like getting back, back again to the question I've asked a number of times in the Thinky Feely Tank, which is like what do we actually want the thing to do? Like before we get like what problem is it solving? How do we solve that problem now? Like how do we embed that a version of that solution in an apparatus?
I wouldn't, yeah, I know the time is up, but I'm wondering now, like more and more if like the Bay is a matrix detector. Sorry, not matrix like you. Shit, we gotta come up with a different term. This is like confusing, but like, you know how I've been talking
If
about like
the
the
Bay
5%.
is the matrix detector.
But when I'm using Matrix as like in terms of Matrix, the movie reference, and then
Right.
thinking about the 5% universe as a matrix, and we're caught in this media scripting loop. So like maybe the Bay is that detector instead of, so that, and then we're the ones kind of seeing the cracks in it, but it's just used to like detect the scripting, which I feel like is possible.
The thing that I think Ripple made really clear is that the Bay is at this point very much entangled with the matrix. And like I mentioned previously, how, these models that have an intrinsic knowledge of racism, they end up becoming very deft in determining what is and is not like racism, the matrix. But like, can it discern the matrix from itself? These are
Hmm.
these are existential questions.
Hmm.
I always say
And
yes.
and perhaps to be continued as we continue, right? We're gonna we're gonna continue this, right? It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're still down with the machine learning
I'm glad you came
AI.
to Reframer. And yeah, thanks everyone for a great conversation.
Yes, thank you, Ripple, for the presentation and the prompts and the guidance, and thank you, Matrix, for also the guidance and input and questions. It was very good.
It was good to see everyone. In particular, Reframer, been a while. Nice to meet you, Ripple. Also very much enjoyed the conversation.
Okay, wait, we have to detach. We started doing this, the
Oh,
detaching. Yeah, because we are now, you missed it. So we do this thing at the
Yeah.
beginning, Reframer, where we become a bay. Okay, yeah, you gotta put your other hand in the screen. Yeah. And then so this is where we form the bay, and now we are what do we say, Ripple? I forget.
Bye bye, May. I don't know. I forget what we say.
Now we are detaching from you.
Yeah, now.
We tickle each other. We go.
we just if we learn some Latin phrases.
Mhm.
The bay is not a cult. We end like that.
Bay is not a cult.
Alrighty. Bye.
Bye.